differentiating thing that allows us to action that plan, defer the capital gains, invest into these projects, and then ultimately, whenever we sell the projects or dispose of them, then that's when the gains are realized. And the DST was a very innovative and unique differentiating thing that allowed us to action that plan. When we came into it, I have to say I had a lot of skepticism, and I thought, well, there seems to be a good concept, but there are some issues going to the whole risk mitigation and focus. And I want to make sure that I bring in people that do know what is going on, that has that experience with me. And I have to say, there were some doubters that go, this sounds good, but you never know what you're getting into. Right? And so I had those people look at that. But then what we did was I did bring on my accountant to a conversation, and we spent multiple times on, and he went through everything, all his questions. I also discussed it with our own attorney that we have about what the ramifications are and so on, feasments and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, though, Brett, it is where I think got me over the goal line was reaching out to others about how their experience has been with you. And their testimony, which I want to also share, was what gave me the confidence that this is going to be something that is going to be able to be partnership. It's a multi-year thing. This is not just going to be a one and done sort of thing, and the fees aren't cheap, I'm going to say, but ultimately it was the returns that we're getting from being able to invest far outpace that cost. And so that was what at the end of the day made us very attracted to it. And the testimonies and the recommendations from others really cemented doing it in my mind.
Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to another episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, also streaming on Build It to Billions. I'm Brett Swarts, he's Dan Palmer, and we're covering some of the biggest objections to help you feel great about your exit with us, whether you're an advisor who's going to be bringing in a client of yours, or whether you are the owner of a business or real estate or stock, Bitcoin, and you're saying, hey, can I trust these guys? Can I get around this Deferred Sales Trust? Do I have enough, confidence because my exit's coming up quick? Dan, you just watched that video. What really stuck out for you? And then let's dive into these big objections on legal and fees and help everyone hopefully overcome any hesitation they have right now.
Yeah, I think there was a lot in there, to tell you the truth. He talked about how many eyes he put on it before he moved forward. He was worried about the risk mitigation, which, I'm sure after talking with Campbell Law, you find their track record, 30-year track record, thousands of transactions, billions of dollars in sales. They've also defended the audits. And so I think that made him feel comfortable. But then also hearing the testimony of other people who have gone before, I think that was powerful for him. I think also bringing his CPA in, we always laugh, CPA has really no incentive to tell you to do something that they don't know about. If it goes well, they don't get the credit for it. We do. If it goes bad, then they get the blame for it. And so they normally just put up a roadblock right off the bat. But when the CPA comes in and meets with us and they hear that this is not tax evasion, it's not tax avoidance, it truly is tax deferral, it's legal, it makes sense, and they walk through the process, they normally get on board and they say, wow, this is just an incredible thing for you. So those are some of the initial things that jump off the top of my head.
Absolutely. And I also want to share that Nathan Judge is happy to talk with anyone here who's considering using our services, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. A little bit about his background as well. He not only builds these amazing, they rent out for $20,000, $25,000 a week, Airbnb kind of compounds on the beaches of North Carolina. But before that, he was a stock risk analyst. And so if you watch these MSNBC or BBC News and the money shows, he was one of the talking heads that would come on and analyze stock, analyze investments, analyze the market. So for a living, he analyzed risk, right? So you can imagine for his own sale, the amount of, detail and rigor that he put us in the strategy through, and rightfully so. I'm glad he did. And you should take that approach as well with as you come in to consider our services or anyone else's services that's providing large, momentum events for you and your family. And so that gave me a lot of, every time I close a deal, Dan, I get more confidence because it's not just, me saying, I think this works. This is years ago when I started at Marcus and Millichap. I'll never forget when I was speaking with one of my kind of mentors in the office, and he said, I said, I asked him, how do I get on the other side of the phone? Like, how do I get to these meetings? Like, this is so hard. And he goes, well, you got to add value. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, every time you call people and every time you talk to them, if you can't solve their problem or know more about their property and have a solution for it, you're really just wasting their time. Like, that's all you're doing when you're doing that. And so you've got to come into with something with conviction, with confidence, with a true solution to their actual problem. So understand their problem and have a true solution that's going to be transformational for them. And at that time, you're thinking, okay, so that's like finding another property in a 1031 exchange, or that's, helping them, understand that they can raise the rents, or they could do this, tax, property tax reassessment by submitting to the county, like, so those kind of things. But what kept coming to the top of my mind through all of my conversations, that people wanted to transact, but they felt trapped by the capital gains tax. That's when I learned about the deferred sales trust and the way to defer taxes, not having to do a 1031 exchange. But I still would call and kind of test it out, right, Dan? And say, hey, what do you think, right? Because I was still, 24, 25. Like, I'm just really new in the business. And it wasn't until I really start to close the deals that I start to get the conviction. And every time I close a deal with someone like a Nathan, and I go, wow, Nathan, your background is extensive. And also his CPA also had lots of questions. When he says that line there were those that they're doubters, right? Which, by the way, 99% of CPAs are going to be doubters until they meet with us. But here's what Nathan did right? I just want to make sure that if you're listening to this, that you make sure you do this right. You don't make this mistake. The thing that Nathan did right is he made sure to bring the CPA onto the call with the tax attorney, with myself, right? So we could walk through the strategy, answer his questions. In other words, he didn't let the fear of uncertainty of the CPA not knowing about it prior to him bringing it to him stop him from having it be a possible solution for the outcome that he really wanted. And so we had those calls, right? Maybe an hour, maybe two, total 2 hours. And his CPA was like, got it, no problem. Here we go. And that's the big lesson that I want to share with people is don't let the shift in trust that needs to happen, because this is a shift in trust, stop you for what you want your outcome to be for your exit. Nathan was also very, very clear, Dan, on what he wanted. Did you catch what he really wanted and why he wanted the deferred sales trust? Did you catch that? Mm-mm. So it was the ability to build more of the properties he's already building. What is the common challenge with the 1031, Dan? Do you remember? When you sell something, what do you have to do?
You have to replace it. Right.
And so it's equal or greater value, right? So he was selling something around $5 million. Well, his property that he's buying for the land, $500,000, $700,000 for the land. Well, that's not $5 million. How long does it take to build a property? 12, 15, 18 months? Well, how long do you have to do a 1031 exchange? 45 days to identify, 180 days to close. So it's incompatible with the developer. And that's what Nathan wanted to solve for. He was saying, I was making so much of a profit, it made 0 sense for me to 1031. I wanted to just pour into my development business. And so for him, it was an ideal marriage, right? And so this is what I want to encourage you to have. And I call this the successful exit pyramid, okay? It's really, really the foundation is, first of all, having a mindset of stewardship, knowing that, hey, there could be other opportunities for me to defer tax. It's somewhere between 20, 30, 40% of every one of my exits. So how can I be a steward of that and not just assume that I have to pay the tax? And then it's like leadership, building a team of leaders to help you through this. We would love to be an opportunity to be a part of that leadership team with you. Of course, your CPA is a part of that team. Your financial advisor is a part of that team. Then it's about trust, because at a certain point, you do have to shift some trust or bring in some extra folks to the circle. Then I'd say it's about poise, right? You got to have poise, because there's going to be some places where you're like, is it still really real? Is it still really work? Dan, what's the one common one when they go, are you going to take the money and move to Puerto Rico or move to, overseas?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of our clients, it's the biggest exit of their life. It's a gigantic deal, and we take that very seriously. And we try to calm the nerves and say, hey, we're going to walk you through this from start to finish. And normally, they get there because, they meet the tax attorney, they meet with us, we talk investments, we just kind of inch our way through the process, and they gain comfort as they go. Mm-hmm. What I like about what Nathan said is he didn't just slam the door the first time he had a doubt. He had a problem. He was going to have a gigantic capital gains tax bill, and there was a solution in front of him, and he examined it, and he investigated it, and he found out the truth about it, and it changed his life. It would have been very easy for him the first time he had a doubt just to slam the door. And we do that in our life all the time. You know, one thing comes into our mind and we slam the door on an incredible opportunity, and he didn't do that. And probably it's because of the background you mentioned before, you know, being the risk mitigation guy and analyzing the market. And he took his time and he went through the process. He brought the right people into the meetings, like his CPA. And because of that, he built a comfort level. And now he's in a great situation as a result of that courage that he showed.
Absolutely. We call it, you know, poise. I think about basketball growing up and playing in like big games and the intensity of you know, the time running out, and you have a chance to have some poise and that's really what's happening in these large exits. And the challenging part for most, you know, the entrepreneurs we work with and the investors we work with is they're not often having multi-million dollar, you know, tens of millions of dollar, $100 million exits. Like it's probably the one or a couple times maybe in their entire life. And so it takes a tremendous amount of poise to not get too high or too low within the process. Now, one thing that I've always appreciated about the attorneys that we work with, and then also just a little bit about what we do, is we work on a conditional basis. And so we promise not to talk you into anything if it's not a good fit. At any point you think it's not a good fit, just let us know. And 100% conditional. If your deal doesn't close, you don't want to use the trust or structure or services, you don't owe us anything. And so that's a very kind of just low stakes due diligence opportunity for you to exercise poise. Now, keep in mind, we do need to set this up prior to the close of escrow. Really important. Unless you're working with us with your 1031 exchange, and then we can do a partial 1031 or save your 1031. But either way, we need to be, you know, early. And so we want to encourage you to sit down with us on a consultation call if you haven't already, to talk with our clients like a Nathan and others. We have our Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel in particular has this client success stories. If you go to their playlist, and you can watch a handful of client success stories and their videos and their testimonials. And I mean, I'm thinking about David Sloan. He's an attorney who owns over 3,000 units, right? Same type of, you know, very smart, very sharp. And his business partner, Jordan, as well, built a tech company, exited that, and is in multifamily investments. There's Nathan Judge. There's a gentleman named Jeff Joaquin, and Jeff, with his advisor, Joe Walters, reviewed this. That they sold a billboard. He sold a billboard company and used their services. Those are just a few to consider. Go to Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel. Click on playlist to watch some more. So let's kind of tackle the kind of the action I want everyone to take here or consider taking, right? I want you to steward the vision that you feel called to for this exit, right? There's a reason you're feeling called or moved towards making an exit, making a change. Maybe it's truly passive income. Maybe it's retirement. Maybe it's to launch that next business venture. By the way, for Nathan, it was to him to fund his next development project. He was developing, selling, you know, paying, you know, 30, 35% of the proceeds in tax, starting over, doing that again, starting over, and he's going, wow, I mean, this is 33%. I mean, if I do 3 deferred sales trusts, that's like I did an extra deal, right? It's about 100%, 33, 33, 33, right? It's an extra deal. And so it just made sense. And so what's the vision for where you're at? And steward that vision. Don't let anything get in the way of that vision. And then you got to entrust the execution. Like kind of what Dan said, that our legal track record collectively with the tax attorneys is perfect right now. Going back close to collectively 30 years, thousands of transactions, and never had a single change in any of the audits. By the way, never been on an IRS watch list, the trust, never been on a dirty dozen, not a reportable transaction. And so those are key things for your CPA, right? To know that if you're wanting to encourage them to take a look at this is something that has a long track record. So the legal part is there. It's also lifetime audit defense provided. Dan, explain the lifetime audit defense, and then we'll go into fees.
Yeah, so the tax attorneys we work with, it's part of their initial fee to set up the trust. If you're ever audited, they already have the file on you. They build it. I like what they say. They say we start from the beginning building the file to defend any potential audit. And so if an audit comes, they have the file ready and they defend it. And after 30 plus years and 20 something audits, they have a perfect track record. And so for a lot of people, that's the big concern. Like, am I going to get audited on this? And it's like, well, probably not. It's thousands of transactions, maybe 20 something audits. And so very, very low chance of even getting audited. But then even if you did, for whatever particular reason, they defend you at no additional cost. And so that's a great relief for a lot of our clients to have that in the back pocket, to where, hey, if I get that dreaded letter, I just send it over to the tax attorneys and they handle it.
100%. And by the way, it's up to about 35 now. All still no change, no findings for the audits. State level audits, promoter level audits, federal audits. Most of our audits in California never had a change or a finding. There's also a private letter ruling. People always wonder about that. If you sign the NDAs, they're happy. The tax attorneys are happy to provide that. And there's also been third-party national law firms that have looked at this and given the green light. In fact, if I go back since 2009 and working with this, Dan, I would say 98% of all of the actual CPAs who signed the NDA or the tax attorneys who signed the NDA, they've all given it a green light. And they usually say the same thing. Wow, Todd really figured it out. And it was actually more simple than I thought it would be. Like, they had this idea of where they thought it was and maybe why it broke down. Then once they signed the NDA and Todd broke it down, they go, oh, that actually is simple, really simple and smart. And, wow, yeah, you figured it out, Todd. Like, way to go. And so that's the common thing. You have to realize that on the other side of the table, and this is fine, we're happy to compete. And by the way, sometimes it's combination sequencing and timing on different strategies, but usually the person who's saying the loudest no is the person who has a competing strategy, which is fine. Like, you might want to use a little bit of both. And maybe theirs is better, by the way. We like to say we're Capital Gains Tax Solutions, plural with an S. And so if you have something better with a longer track record and all these different things, we're happy to work with that. In fact, we work with groups as well that do some charitable stuff, which is fantastic. We have some groups, of course, that do some Delaware statutory trust, which has its place. Of course, the 1031 exchange has its place. But the deferred sales trust we found is the most flexible, legal, proven strategy that most often solves the most amount of large dominoes, those big momentum things that people are trying to get: truly passive income, diversification, liquidity, to be out of debt, to eliminate some estate tax if they're doing our 2.0 version, to be able to defer some income tax, to be able to partner and be an entrepreneur with the capital. These are all these different things that we want to encourage you of what's possible to partner with your kids or your grandkids, to not have to go into investments ever again. It's as far as active investments, it's really that transformational for families. And so the lifetime audit defense is really important to understand. There's also an audit window. It's usually 2 to 4 years, depending what state you're in. I think California is like 4, most other states are 2 to 3 from the time that you file. And so as long as you fully report, and our tax attorneys will work with your CPA to make sure it's properly reported, it's the statutes are running. And after that window, it's really kind of a locked door for the audits. And so that's also a peace of mind. It's not something you have to be thinking about, and you shouldn't be thinking about, because it's not anything legal that has been an issue. And so now let's quickly touch on fees, Dan. So walk through what's the fee for the law firm, and then I'll walk through what the fee is for the ongoing for the trustee.
Yeah, the fee for the law firm, it's a one-time fee on the gross sales price at closing. It's 1.5% on the first million, so $15,000 for the first million, and then 1.25% on anything above that. Like I said, that's a one-time fee, and they're normally, set it up, and then they're kind of out of it unless an audit comes, and then they step back in and defend you.
Perfect. And I'll just kind of break that down for folks. Let's just say it's a $5 million gross sales price. We'll just say it's debt. There's no debt, but regardless of debt or not, it's still on the gross sales price. And let's just say you own it 100%, so there's no partners. So like Dan said, on the first million, it'd be $15,000. And then on the next million, it'd be 1.25%. Next 4 million, 1.25%. So it'd be 50. So it'd be 50 on the 4 million, 15 on the first million. So a total of 65,000. Only paid at closing, one-time legal fee. There could be some hourly if there was some adjustments along the way that's outside of the scope. It's kind of rare, but that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so that's the one-time legal fee paid at closing, paid from the escrow proceeds. Now the ongoing trustee fee, I'm going to break this down and kind of give you kind of a window here, okay? Depending on the amount, we have some fee breaks, but I'm going to start with the high. I'm going to work my way back to the low. And so up to 3 million, you're basically, if it's total net proceeds. So let's say you did sell an asset for 5 million and you had 2 million of debt. Well, that 3 million, let's say, hits the account minus the closing costs. Let's say it's exactly 3 million. So 3 million is being managed under trusteeship with us. Let's say we have a financial advisor on the account. It's going to be about 1.5% to 2% what's combined with the financial advisor and the trustee. So all in, about 1.5% to 2% on a recurring basis. okay, every year. Now, our unique advantage is we wait about 60 days before we collect any of our recurring fee. Okay, and that means we have a chance for the trust, hopefully, to make some interest, to earn. And in an ideal world, it just cash flows our fee. We don't know what's going to happen with the investments. Depends on your risk tolerance. Depends on where we put it. Depends on the cash flow. But at least it gives the plane, if the trust is trying to take off, it gives it a chance to get to a cruising altitude and producing the cash flow. And so on $3 million, I'm going to use a 1.85, kind of in the middle there. It's about $55,000, per year. Now, you would have paid probably on $5 million if the gain was full $5 million. Let's say we'll use a combined 30%. You would have paid $1.5 million, and so that's kind of the math, right? So if I would have paid $1.5 million in a tax, do I want to pay the $65,000 one time and then the ongoing $55,000? But especially if I can cash flow that $55,000. That's pretty sweet, right? That's a pretty sweet deal. And that's kind of the math. We want to make sure that the math makes a ton of sense. And there's lots of ways and different videos that we'll make to show you how to make the DST an investment and not an expense, including income tax deferral, diversification, asset protection, estate tax elimination, new depreciation schedules. We're going to break that down more in future videos, but we're out of time today. If you are interested in getting started, we want to encourage you to go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com, schedule a consultation with myself, Dan, one of our team members, who can walk you through to see if this could be a good fit. Again, we promise not to talk to you anything unless it's a good fit. Then we're going to encourage you to take that next step with us. It's 100% conditional. At any point you don't think it's a good fit, you let us know. He's Dan Palmer. I'm Brett Swarts, capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. Also, if you want to pick up the book, Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan, that's also on Amazon. It's a bestseller. Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank's in the book, which is pretty cool. You can pick that up on Amazon. We appreciate you listening or watching today, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye now.